Hello and welcome to my FlossTube channel. I'm Farish and I'm here today to show you a quick, easy, and cheap way to finish your needlework. So let's get started. I'm going to quickly run through a list of the things that you will need, and I will put it in the episode description as well. And in that description, it'll probably be listed in a much more logical way than I'm going to go through it right now. So the star of the show is whatever needlework project that you have to finish. This is a little ornament that I did. It doesn't have to be seasonal, and it can certainly be, I shouldn't say any size. I mean, this is meant for something fairly small. I'd say 5 by 7 or smaller. I have a little bit of Warm and Natural here. You quilters will be familiar with this product. I use this for padding. I prefer it over polyfill. And you'll need 2 pieces of fabric that will go well with your needlework. I grabbed a handful of trims. I'm not really sure which of these I'm going to use, if any, and I may end up going back to my stash a couple of times before I actually finish with this. So that's the main thing for that. Oh, you'll need some sort of cardboard. Now this is my favorite tip, is to go to a comic book store, and you can buy usually packaged 100 sheets, or you can sometimes get it 50 sheets of acid-free cardboard. And I like it because it's thin enough to cut easily, and yet if you want a thicker, stronger cardboard, you simply make it 2 or 3 ply by cutting several pieces of the same shape and size. So we'll go into that a little bit more once we get started. So that's what we're going to need to actually put the ornament part of it together. Now, my finishing idea is to use dowels and Plaster of Paris to make a container that the ornament will sit on top of. So that's where we're going with this. Now, earlier today, I went on and painted my dowel so it would be dry, and I just used acrylic paint, easily accessible at any kind of a hobby store. Doesn't have to be in a tube. It can be the kind that are in the little bottles. Now I got these dowels at what we used to call the dollar store. Now it's the $1.25 store. And there were 10 in this package for $1.25. And so that's what I grabbed for that. Let's see what else we have here. Plaster of Paris. Now you can get this at a hardware store, building supply store, but also at a craft supply store. I happened to pick this up at Michael's. So I think it was like $8 for this whole big container, and this is going to make a lot. We're only going to use a very small part of it today. Let's see what else we have here. In mixing up the Plaster of Paris, you'll also need water. And I'm going to use just a disposable cup. I went on and drew a line on there so that when I go to measure it, I can use that. It's the ratio of water to Plaster of Paris. You don't have to use a measuring cup. I advise you not to use anything that you would also be using for food preparation. That's why I'm using something that's disposable. Oh, and putting together the ornament part of it, I like Aleene's Tacky glue. Let's see. You'll also need something to mix up the Plaster of Paris. Now, this is a food spatula, but I am going to mark it in such a way that my family and I will remember that we're not using this for food. But I'm going to use that for mixing up the Plaster of Paris. And you'll need a container to mix up the Plaster of Paris. I've just got I'm just recycling a yogurt container. And you'll need a container that's going to be used to actually create the shape for the Plaster of Paris. And I grabbed this one because it had a lid on it so that when I'm ready to make this, I can put the dowel right into the the part of the drink cup that's meant for a straw, and that will hold it in place while the plaster of Paris solidifies. Let's see, I also have a couple of sticks here for spreading out glue if I need to. And of course I've got a cutting mat and a ruler and my trusty rotary cutter. And I have paper towels just in case they're needed. And I think that's just about it. Okay, so the first important thing we have to do is to figure out exactly what our measurements are. Anybody who does any kind of woodworking is familiar with the saying, measure twice, cut once. And I will also add to that, measure, write it down, and you'll cut once, which will save you a lot of aggravation. So my needlework measures right at 3 inches square. I want about 1/4 inch showing all the way around. So I'm going to cut the boards 3.5 by 3.5. That's going to be used for mounting my needlework. I need to just decide how much of my fabric I want showing around the outside edge. And I'm also going to have a little bit of trim in between there. So I have to think about that. About 1/2 inch showing all the way around. So that needs to be 4.5 by 4.5 showing. Now for my fabric, if my board's going to be 4.5 inches, I want about 3/4 inch to bring around to the back to glue it in place. You don't want a whole lot more than that because it's just going to be extra fabric, and too little makes it hard to maneuver. So I'm going to cut my fabric 6 by 6. I will also be cutting the, I'm going to need to cut 2 pieces of this. In this case, I want 2 different colors. You don't have to use 2 different colors. Just think it might be interesting. And then I also want my padding needs to be cut the same size as my needlework board. So that's 3.5 by 3.5. Anyway, so write it down, make a plan, because as you saw, walking through the steps, you may remember something that will help you cut it once the right size. So now I have all my pieces cut. Now it's time to put it all together. Let's start with the fabric that's going to show on the front of the finished project. So you can see that I've got about 3/4 inch all the way around, and I'm going to simply just glue this down. We're going to start with the corners, and so I'm just going to go ahead and put glue on all 4 corners here. And if you feel like you need to spread it around a little bit, you can use your spreader. I also sometimes just use scraps of my cardboard. And what you want to do is bring each of the corners down as much as possible as a 45-degree angle, and then just sort of finger press the creases like this. So I've got that right on the point. I like Aleene's because it dries quickly, but as you can see, if you need to maneuver it, you can still shift it around a little bit. It doesn't like glue so instantly that you're stuck. You know, the other thing I did not put on my list of things to get together, but I'm already knowing that I'm going to stop and get one, is some sort of a handy wipe or something, because as soon as you start getting glue on your fingers, you want to get rid of it before you do the next step. Okay, so I'm just finger pressing those down, and then they're already glued enough that I can start the next step. So I want to put just a little bit of glue in this, where it's going to be between these 2 pieces of fabric, just a touch. And then I'm gluing around the outside edge of the fabric. Again, just tucking just a little bit of a glue dot underneath. So let's get this part done before I glue any more. Okay, so I'm going to fold this forward like that. Hold it just for a moment and fold this in this direction. I want to try to get the corner just as tight as I can. And the reason I'm doing it like this is I want to have it as flat as possible on the back. So what we're trying to do is basically make a mitered corner. You've got your two pieces of fabric meeting there in the corners like that. And that's going to be actually the front of the ornament underneath the needlework. And I'm going to go wash my hands before I do anything else. Now I'm going to repeat the same process with the other piece. Now that we have our two pieces of cardboard covered with our backing fabric, it's time to do the actual piece of needlework, and we're going to do it in much the same way. The biggest difference is I'm going to start by gluing my two pieces of cardboard together simply to make it a little heavier, basically making a 2-ply out of it. And I'm going to put it, I'm gluing it just together like that. Like I say, whoops, good thing it didn't glue right away because I had to shift it just a little bit to square it up. And then I'm just going to put a couple of dabs of glue on this side. Just to hold my batting in place. The padding part is totally optional. I realize it's hard to see it since I've got the same color here for my newsprint. It just kind of adds just a nice touch to it. Now at this point, when we were doing the fabric, it didn't matter exactly if it was, I mean, it was pretty much centered. But for this piece, it's going to have to be exactly centered. So we have to pay attention to that. This time I'm putting glue all the way around on the back, and then I'm going to stretch the fabric from the front so I can make sure that it's staying centered. Because the corners can actually be done the opposite way as well. So if we work this from the front, make sure that it's even all the way around. Put a couple clothespins in place. And by the way, they make quilters clips that basically do the same thing. I don't use them for a project where glue is involved because I don't want to get glue on them. Basically the opposite way that I did the first set. Okay, I'm going to give that about 5 minutes for that glue to set, and then I'm going to work on my corners. Okay, so here we are for corner option number 2. And let's see how this is set up here. You've got little creases here a little bit from the clothespins, but they really will just plump out pretty easily. Okay, so that's nice and centered. So now on the back, I have the opposite of what I had before. And I actually glued this down a little bit more than I thought. So now I basically have like a 45-degree angle going on here. But what I have is this excess fabric that I need to do something with. And basically what I'm going to do is just fold it down like this. So can you see in there where you've got kind of the 45-degree angle going? And then when you bring this down like this, then that flattens it out and gets that extra fabric out of the way. So that's what we're going to do in all 4 corners, and just add some glue to each one of these. So I need to put a dab of glue underneath this flap and underneath on this side and in the middle. Just like that. And I'm gonna put a clothespin in place. So I'm gonna do that on all 4 corners now. Okay, so now we have all of our component parts done. Let me get some of this stuff out of the way. Take a look at our corners. And looking pretty good here. These clothespins were sticking a little bit on the back, which again is why I do not use my good quilt clips on something like this. Okay, so now we have trim to add, and my plan is for this to be the front and this one to be the back. So I just have some very simple lace. You could use rickrack, you could use cord. Don't think I'm gonna have enough of this. And I can decide how much of it I want to show, whether I want to bring it just right up to that little eyelet edge or have a little bit more of that to show. I think I kind of like it right there. So I'm going to apply this to the back of this piece. And I've got plenty here, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of measure off and go ahead and cut this. So I know I have a gracious plenty. I'm going to add another little bit to this. Get that out of the way. I'm going to start on the bottom. Okay, and this is what I was hoping I would do, that when I get back here, the two are going to overlap, so that's good. All right, so I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to actually make it happen. So the pins are there just to space it out. I think they would get in the way of the glue, but I like the way that was working out. So I'm going to start right there. So I've got one scallop on the corner, and then starting. This glue will dry clear, so if you get some on the front where you don't really want it, wouldn't panic too much. But I can see where I have a glop. Well, it's not too bad. And also take a look at the front and make sure that it's looking the way you want it to look. Now I don't have the corner glued down yet. I'm going to wait and do the 4 sides first. Now let's see if this works out as well as it did when I was pinning it. Now these are my good fabric scissors that I've been using, so I want to be really careful not to get any glue on it. So I'm going to let that set up, and then I'm going to trim off the excess. Okay, time to check in and see how we're doing here. So, got the corners glued down. Take these off carefully. Because like I said, they tend to get stuck on the back where the glue is. And I'm feeling pretty good about how invisible. So whether you're using rickrack or anything with a pattern, do plan out where it's going to begin and end. All right, so this is the fabric that I'm planning on mounting this on. But you know what? I'm standing here looking at this and I'm thinking, what if this was I don't know. I think I like this better. It's hard to see against this dark background. Let's see what it looks like here. I think I like that one better. Okay, so at this point, what I need to do is glue these 2 pieces together, and then I'm going to glue these 2 pieces together. But there's something special I'm going to do with these first. All these things that I'm doing with Aleene's glue, I imagine you could use a glue gun. I just don't. I don't have anything against it, and you know, those of you who are sitting there thinking, I think I'll get my glue gun out. That's fine. Okay, so just make sure you've got that centered. And rather than putting clothespins on this, I think I'm just going to get a book. Oh, by the way, I'm upstairs in the kitchen. I've got a big project laid out on my work table downstairs, which is why I'm up here doing this. Family's away tonight. So I'm just going to grab a cookbook and press that on top of that. And then I'm going to work on the back. Now at this point, if you just want to make this into an ornament, you're pretty much done. What I would do is before I sandwich these together, I would find my center and add a ribbon or something to use as a hanger, and then glue these 2 together and you're done. So that's one option at this point. So everything I've shown you so far, you can make this into an ornament. All you need to do, like I say, is add a hanger and then glue the 2 together, put the clothespins all the way around the edges, and you're done. But I want to make this into a tabletop ornament, display, whatever you want to call it. So I have to do something a little bit different, and that's to add a place for the dowel on the back. So once I decided to use the red as the backing, I needed to cut a piece of the red fabric to use. And so what we're going to do here is just very quickly, I've just sort of finger pressed the edges in about 1/2 inch, maybe a little bit less. And I need to glue that down. This is going to end up being very stiff when we're all done. A lot of glue. And I also need to put some glue across the top, because what I want to do here is I want to fold in the top like that, and then fold in the sides like that. So now I have kind of finished edges on the top, what's going to be the top and the sides. And also I better put some glue here and here. All right, now that's going to set that aside for a moment. And what I need to do on the back here is to find my center. Now, if I remember right, this is 4.5 inches wide. Yes. So 2 1/4 is going to be my center. So that's my center. So now what I want to do is I'm going to add this piece of fabric on the back as a channel for my dowel. Now, I took a moment, I really thought about this. I need to use my dowel as sort of form to put to create this channel, but I don't want the dowel to stick to it because I want to be able to take this apart and store it easily. So that's why I took a moment and just wrapped a piece of saran wrap, plastic wrap around that. And then later on I'll just take that out. That way, I'm hoping the glue's not going to stick to this either. Gotta think about this. So the idea here is I'm going to use the dowel as a form that's going to create like a little tunnel here, like this. So the dowel needs to be in the center, and then I'm going to put glue at where the top of the dowel would be. I'm going to get glue all over that pin, but that's okay. And down the sides, like this. And because I really want to make sure this is glued down well, I'm also going to put glue on the corresponding top and sides of this piece, just to make sure that I've got it all covered. And now I'm going to lay this in place. Trying to keep my dowel straight. You'll end up with a little bit of a bump here at the top, maybe. I want this glued at the top because I don't want the dowel poking out the top either. So I'm going to hold that down. And where this glue is eking out the sides, that's okay. It'll dry clear, and I would rather make sure that I've got this glued down really, really well, because this is going to be a bit of a workhorse. Now I want to make sure that my dowel, look at that, it's just slotting right out, good. I'll leave it in there a bit longer. But I do just want to make sure, I'm going to twist it every once in a while, make sure it's not getting glued down. Yeah, so that's just a nice channel there. And then down here at the bottom, I'm just going to cut the excess off. And my plan is to add a bow, and so any kind of raw edge is going to be covered. I figure anybody who's looking at it that carefully is probably trying to figure out how to do it, and that's okay. So just so you see what's going on. So see how that's creating kind of a tunnel there. That's going to be where the dowel will slip in place. All right. Okay, so now we're going to put the two pieces together. And I want to be careful of the channel that I made on the back. So I'm going to lay the piece with the cross stitch down, face down, and glue. You know, I put that piece of lace between my linen and the piece of and this piece of green. But you could also add something between these two layers if you wanted to, or go back and add piping. I have a lot of ideas. You probably do too. Okay, so now place this one on here and line it up and use the clothespins to keep them together. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry, let that rest right here. All right, so for this next part, oh, I want to clean this off before I forget. For this next part, I thought a lot about, I know what I wanted this to look like, but I had to really think about how to make it happen. And I wanted something that would be heavy enough that it wouldn't tip over easily. I wanted something that was fairly cheap, and I wanted something that was easily accessible, readily accessible. And it also had to be something that was pourable, so that whether, you know, depending on the shape you wanted this container to be, that you'd have some flexibility. And that's how I came up with Plaster of Paris. So, you know, be prepared for making a mess. Make sure that you've got, you know, I've got my surface covered here with newsprint and oilcloth, piece of plastic, something that's not going to damage whatever surface you're working on. Now, in reading the directions, this is the same stuff that is used for a lot of different home building things. But 2 parts of the Plaster of Paris and 1 part of cold water. Stir to a smooth consistency. Do not mix more material than can be used in 6 to 10 minutes. And discard any other material that has begun to harden. So we're going to mix this up. And that's what I'm using this for. And like I said before, I'm taking this, using this as my measuring cup rather than using a true measuring cup. Because since it's a ratio of 2 to 1, so it doesn't really matter whether that's 6 ounces or whatever. I just kind of am eyeballing how much I'm going to need. Very carefully, because this is full. Probably should put an apron on. And I you know, I don't think we have to be like really, really precise, but like that's right there on my line. So it's 1 part. And this will be the 2nd part. All right. That's going to be plenty. I'm going to go ahead and close this up, get it out of the way. Make sure it's sealed very tightly so that it won't harden on its own. And then I need 1 part water. So, got my 1 part water, pour it in here. And as I said, I'm going to be labeling this as a do not use for food. This is kicking up a little bit of dust. So if you're someone who has to be careful about breathing, we all have to be careful about breathing, but you know what I mean. If you have asthma, for example, you might want to wear the kind of mask that construction workers wear for safety's sake. Turn this on for a moment so you can see how this is mixing up. So right now I'm got some clumps on the bottom. So, see, I'm still sort of clumpy. So right now, it's about the consistency of heavy cream. Okay, so at this point, you would already have to know what container you're going to be pouring this in. You only have 6 to 10 minutes, so you can't go looking for something now. You have to have it handy. I took that plastic off my dowel, but I should have left it on because the same thing is going to be true when I stick this in here. All right, so I have time. I'm not planning on filling this up. So what I'm going to do here, pour this in. Oh, it's still lumpy. To about where I filled up to right about right there. So, let's hope this works. I'm gonna put the lid on here and stick this down in here. And I want to make sure that this is straight as possible anyway. Because once the plaster of Paris hardens, it's a done deal. I thought that while I'm waiting for the plaster of Paris to set upstairs, I would come down to my workspace here in the basement and share with you my new project. I am so excited about this. So let me tell you about Needleworker's J.O.Y. This is a concept that has kind of been in my mind for quite a while. I use a lot of spreadsheets and organizers to keep myself focused on things that I need to get done. And I thought that I would kind of gussy them up a little bit and share it with you. So what I have here is what I'm calling Needleworker's J.O.Y. for the year 2023. And if you like it as much as I do, this is something I'm thinking about doing on an annual basis. So let me walk you through some of the features here. I probably won't have time to talk about all of them, but we'll see. So I came up with the title because there are really 3 things that I'm putting together here. It's a journal, it's an organizer, and it's a way of keeping track of a whole year's worth of stitching. And then I just used motifs from my Deer and the Grapes sampler to just sort of decorate all of them. And of course there's a page for you to put where your name, that it belongs to you. Okay, so this is going to be one of the real workhorses. This is a project tracker that you can use to both write down the details of projects that you're currently working on or things that you have kitted up that you haven't started working on yet. And of course, I just put in one copy in the PDF format. You can print 10, you can print 50, you can print 100, whatever you need. And then for people who have projects with a lot more threads than what I have allowed for in that page, I've got a second page. And then, of course, we've got all of our classes and retreats and any kind of get-togethers that we have. And I find this is really instrumental for me because it is so easy to forget the details. And then, of course, when you get home, this is kind of the scrapbook or journaling part of this. You want to keep, you know, a little record of your memories. Who did you meet? Maybe there's a new whatchamacallit that you first saw that you want to add to your wish list, which we will get to. And then, of course, the packing list. Lots of space for you to individualize this. Now, when we get done, I have 2 different pages for I crossed the finish line. Okay, and then 2 of the things that I find just I really, really need. One is a stitch along tracker, and then same idea for a club tracker. When you're stitching something special for somebody special in your life, then this is a way of, again, just having a record of this. The all-important wish list. And, you know, this is something that you can keep in your notebook, but you can also kind of let it laying around on the kitchen counter or whatever for things that you would like for people to gift to you. But now for calendars, I did calendars in 3 different formats, so you will have a choice. That's what I've been doing. Now let's go see how that project is upstairs. I forgot to set a timer and I got distracted, but I know that this is done because it's feeling very solid. So we're gonna see what happens here. First of all, my plastic worked as far as keeping that safe. And at this point, I can either just break this off entirely or just cut it away with a utility knife, which is what and pull this plastic out, and I've got my hole there for a thing. And now let's see how this is turning out. Get these clips off. Cute. And then the unthinkable happened. I lost the footage of the last part of the video that I created. And after spending a couple of hours on the phone with great people helping me from Apple, I finally had to just let go of the fact that they were not going to be recovered. So I am hoping that from these photos you can get an understanding of how I finished it. I simply placed the Plaster of Paris form into a small flower pot, and I'm showing you 2 different ways that I finished it, both with some very sort of glam ribbon and with simple straw. So I hope that these ideas are things that you can put to use in your finishing. And I hope to be back next week with a full video without losing anything. And meanwhile, I hope that you stitch happy and stay safe, and I'll see you then.